Hi, this is Stephanie Lotvin of Tellybean Knits, and today I'm going to show you how to sew in the ends close to where you joined in the round at the beginning of Clue 5 of the Merrymaking cowl. There are spoilers in this video. I will be showing the cowl in progress. So if you have not yet completed Clue 5 of the Merrymaking cowl, then I suggest that you stop the video now because I will be showing the cowl in progress in this video. This is a spoiler alert. Okay, if you have completed Clues 1 through 5 or sections 1 through 5 of the Merrymaking cowl, then you can watch the rest of this video and I will show you how I like to weave in the ends. You're going to need a tapestry needle for this tutorial. All right, let me show you what I have here. So I have my cowl, which has got quite a few stitches on the needles now, in progress, and I'm super excited because I've gotten to move into the color work section, and I want to weave in the ends close to the join of my cowl. You can see there's a small gap where I joined in the round for those 2 rounds. And I want to close that gap and reinforce it so that that is extra strong whenever I pull this cowl on and off over my head. So I'm going to turn my work to the wrong side of my work. And I will show you where I am. I've woven in quite a few ends, but you can see here I have a color 1 end and I have a color 6 end that are both very close to the join for my cowl, and I'm going to show you how I weave those 2 ends in. Now, I just want to say up front, if you've ever seen any of my other videos on weaving in ends, that if you weave in your ends differently than me, that is completely fine. You should do whatever works best for you. This is how I weave in ends. Now, I think when it comes to weaving in ends, every project is a little bit of an adventure, and so it's going to be a little different with every project that you're working on, especially with color work, because the motifs will be different on the right side, which makes weaving in the ends on the wrong side a little bit more of an adventure where you're just seeing what might happen and where you can get those ends in securely. So I want to show you how I'm weaving in my ends, and then if you want to try that method out, then feel free to do so. But if you have a method that works better for you, then you go ahead and do that too. All right, my goal when I weave in ends is to make sure that the ends are secure on the wrong side of my work. I don't want to see any ends on the right side of my work, and I do want to make sure that those ends are nice and secure on the wrong side of my work. That is the only goal, in my opinion. The way that my ends look on the wrong side of my work, well, they're just a fancy addition to the wrong side of my work. No one's going to see that but me. And so what I really want is security. That is the main thing that I'm looking for. I'm going to turn this around. So now I have the neck opening towards the top and my needles towards the bottom. And you can see here's where the join is. And I'm going to start by sewing in the end for color 1. Now you can see the gap here. There's a small gap here. And what I want to do is I'm planning to weave in my color 1 end by working from left to right. So I'll work under that gap, which is going to help close up the bottom of that gap some. And then I'll make sure that this end is nice and secure. What I like to do whenever I'm weaving in this color 1 end is I like to follow the stitches that are in color 1 as they come next to the stitches in color 6. So I'm just going to essentially duplicate the stitches where those 2 colors meet. So I'm going to come in nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and I've chosen quite a sharp tapestry needle, and it's also a pretty fine tapestry needle for this. And so I'm just going to begin by I'm going to give that a gentle tug and make sure that stitch isn't loose, because if that stitch has come loose, I just want to make sure that I don't keep it that way. So I'm going to follow my color 1 stitches and duplicate the stitches along the edge where those 2 colors meet. And I'm going to do this for about an inch or 2.5 centimeters. And now that I've duplicated the stitches for about an inch along that color change, I'm going to take the tip of my tapestry needle and I'm going to split the stitches, the tops of the stitches that I just duplicated along with the tail. I'm going to try to catch a little bit of a ply from each of those, the tail and the stitches, along this top edge of the duplicated stitches. That's the reason that I've chosen such a sharp and fine tapestry needle. All right, so have a look at that. You can see that I've caught a little bit of the ply from the duplicated stitch and from the tail that I just used to duplicate that stitch. And I'm going to pull that through, and then I'm just going to give that a gentle tug to make sure it's not too tight. I don't want to cause any puckering there where those stitches have been duplicated. And then I'm going to come back along the edge, the bottom edge where I duplicated those stitches, and do the same thing. I'm catching a little bit of the tail and the ply from the stitch. And I'm being careful not to poke through to the right side of my work. And it doesn't have to look pretty on the wrong side. Remember, it has to be secure. That's really what I want. So I've come back and I've caught a little bit of each of those plies, and I'm just going to pull my tail through. And then once again, I'm going to give that a little stretch because I don't want any puckering. I'll just double check on the right side of my work that that's hidden. Great. And now I'm going to snip my yarn, leaving about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of yarn. And then I'm going to take the tip of my tapestry needle and I like to fray those ends. The reason I like to do that is I want to make sure that this is super secure. And I know that whenever I block my cowl later that tail might try to pop through, but by fraying the ends on the wrong side of my work, that keeps my tails from popping through to the right side, but it also keeps them from coming out. By catching those plies from the tail and the duplicated stitch, I'm locking that yarn in place the best that I can, and then this fraying is my final measure to keep my yarn from moving around. And you can see that I've done that on all of my ends. There's a little bit of inside fringe happening. And let's have a look at what that sewn in section looks like. So you can see I've woven in the ends here, and then I've frayed it at the end. And if you, after you block, if you feel like you want to trim back that fraying, you can, if you feel like you've got it nice and secure. I do like to kind of pull in all the directions to make sure that yarn can't come back out. And you can see the frayed end is getting a little shorter, but I've left enough there that it won't pop back through. All right, now I'm ready to sew in my color 6 end. I'm just going to put that on my tapestry needle. All right, now my color 6 end is coming from the right side of my work. So I'm just going to, you can see here is the gap that I have between the two ends where my joining rounds were worked, I'm going to bring, since this working yarn is on the right hand side of that gap, I'm going to bring it across to the wrong side of my work, and I'm just going to try to catch two legs. So I'm bringing it across that gap and I'm trying to catch two legs from our rolled edge on the opposite side of that gap. And then I'm just going to pull that closed. I'm just trying to follow that loop. Now I'm going to come back across. I'm going to come down first, and then I'll come back up and across. So I'm going to come down first, follow one of my stitches down. I'm going to come back up. I'm just actually coming underneath where I've just woven in my end. And now I'm going to come from the wrong side to the right side I came through this side of the join, and I'm going to come through on the opposite side where I started, behind two legs of that rolled edge. Now I'm on the right side of my work again. And then once more, I'm going to come back through where I went before, which is behind the two legs on the left-hand side of the join. And this is, the gap is closed, but I'm now reinforcing that connection between the two edges. You can see that the gap has actually been closed, but I'm reinforcing that connection so that whenever this cowl is pulled over my head, it doesn't stretch out or come loose in any way. And I want to just give that as much security as I can. And I'm going to once again come down. I'm going to try to follow this bottom loop in color 6. And now what I want to do is I want to do the same thing with color 6 that I did with color 1. So with color 1, I duplicated the stitches working from left to right, and then I locked those stitches in and frayed the end. This time I'm going to work from right to left along the join between the color 6, or the color transition between color 6 and color 1, and I'm just going to duplicate those stitches for about an inch. So I'm just going to follow the stitches duplicating the stitches along that color transition. Okay, I've duplicated the stitches along from right to left along that color transition between color 6 and color 1. And now I'm just going to once again split the stitches and catch a little ply from the duplicated stitch in the tail to lock in my yarn. Since I'm working with a superwash yarn, it is not particularly sticky, and so I like to have a little extra security when I am weaving in my ends. And then I'm going to come back across the top. I developed this method after knitting, when I started knitting shawls for my children when they were little. They loved to wear shawls. Oh, I'm so sorry. They loved to wear shawls to school. And whenever they would wear shawls to school, they would pull them on and off. And my youngest is one tough little thing. And she was the hardest and the hardest on knits, but also the most knit-worthy. And she one day pulled her shawl so much that it broke where I had woven in an end, and it made two of the colors at the edge of the shawl at the center just come completely apart, and it was so hard to repair. And I realized I needed a stronger method for weaving in my ends, so I developed this method, which gives me lots and lots of security, and I have never had that problem again, even though my youngest has never gotten any easier on our knitwear. So you can see I've split those stitches and I've caught a little bit of those plies to lock in that end. And now I'm just going to give that a gentle tug in lots of directions so that it is not too tight. I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving about an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to fray that. You can see I'm pinching where I have woven in that end, because as I pull on that frayed portion, it pulls where on the tail that I have there underneath my finger. And so by pinching that, I'm trying to reduce the amount of pull on that yarn. And then I'm going to go back and just tug that in several directions to try to duplicate the amount of stress that my children and I are probably going to put on this end later. Okay, so now I have woven in the ends for color 1 and color 6. And you can see I have closed that gap between the two ends of the cowl in that were gapping after working, joining round 1 and joining round 2. I'm really happy with that. It's nice and strong. Yes, I am pulling quite hard on that because I know that I'm going to put a lot of pressure on it. And if you decide to try this method, especially with the fraying, remember you can always come back after you've done your blocking and you can trim those ends down more if you feel like they need it. I find that over time they'll start to felt to the wrong side of my work, which I really like. That gives it even more security. For the more love that this cowl gets, the more secure that those ends will get, which I particularly like in any piece that I'm working on. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching.